Welcome, I'm Wendy Garflip from United Neighbors, and this is a special edition of Inside Fall River. Today I have two guests with me, Susan Jennings. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
Susan is the Director of the Office of Campus and Community Sustainability at the University of Massachusetts at Dartmouth. And I have Bob Bailey, who is the coordinator of the Southeastern Mass Time Exchange. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
Good to have you both with me. So, Susan, we're going to start with you. Tell me, what is campus and community sustainability?
Well, Wendy, sustainability is broadly defined as the ability of the current generation to satisfy their needs without compromising the ability of future generations to care for themselves.
So let's see if we can break that down a little bit.
Okay.
So what you're saying is that the generation that's here now
Right.
has a responsibility to make sure that they leave for the generation that's coming next the world in a good place?
Correct.
Great.
Correct.
Okay.
So in practical matters, that means not using non-renewable resources like oil and gas, not using all those up, not depleting all our topsoils, but at the same time developing non-renewable sources of energy, developing things like organic farming, which actually benefit soil. So those are some ways that we can make sure that we're protecting the planet for future generations.
Great. And how does your office actually do that?
Okay, so on campus we have formal and informal education. We also do a lot of education within the community through panel presentations, through seminars, through film series. We also work on practical projects like recycling. And the reason that we call ourselves the Office of Campus and Community Sustainability is because we recognize that sustainability doesn't happen in a vacuum, that things don't end at the campus borders, especially issues like water, waste, food. Those are issues that everyone is dealing with and everyone is struggling with. So our office has sited at the edge of campus and community for that reason.
Great. Okay. Bob, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing. What is a time exchange?
Well, a time exchange is essentially a cooperative of people helping each other. It's a situation in which people join and members exchange services, but they get credit for it in the time exchange system. The modern time version, time exchange, was developed in the 80s by a gentleman named Edgar Kahn. And pretty much most time exchanges today involve a computerized system of posting offers and requests and putting their hours up, so that when people do an actual service exchange, the person who receives the exchange or the help, their account pays the account of the person that provided the help. So it's in what we call time credits.
Okay, so let's have an example here. So Susan and I are both members of the time exchange. I'm going to teach Susan how to cook. What happens? How do I do that?
Okay, well, you would be a member of the exchange and you would have perhaps posted an offer to teach some form of cooking, what particular.
Well, I like to can, so
All right,
I'd be really
you'd
good
like
at
to-
teaching canning.
You'd like to teach someone
okay,
how to
preserving things from the garden.
things in
right.
canning. Susan would go on the website and she would log in and browse the offers, and she would see your offer for canning. There would be an email address, and she would simply email you and say, gee, I'd really like to learn how to do some canning. Could we perhaps connect and make an exchange? And so then back and forth through the email, you would arrange, negotiate exactly what you want to do, how long it would take, what would it be involved, if there were any supplies that needed to be bought, who would provide it. And once you'd made the arrangements, then you would simply get together, do the exchange. You would do the lesson on canning. And after everything is done, either of you would go back on the website and post the exchange hours. So, for example, if you spent 2 hours, you would go back on the website, and there's a place where you post the hours and you say, I provided this service to Susan Jennings on this date, this number of hours, and it was this particular service. Then as soon as you press record the transaction, the computer automatically takes the 2 hours out of Susan's account, puts them in your account.
Now, do I have to then take 2 hours in payment from Susan? Or can I take 2 hours from anybody that's in the time exchange now?
Well, that's the beauty of the time exchange. You don't need to get the services back from Susan. You can go to anyone else in the time exchange and ask them to do 2 hours of work for you, whatever it is. It could be perhaps you need some help with the garden or some tutoring of your children or whatever it is. If there's someone on the time exchange offering that service, you can ask someone to do that service.
And I can store up those hours.
And you can collect as many hours as you like. And you also don't have to start out with you don't have to give hours before you can get hours. It's okay to go into a negative balance for a while. The purpose of the exchange is to get people to work together to provide the service, and but we don't worry so much about the number of hours and time credits. We're more concerned about people developing connections, relationships, and building a sense of community by helping each other.
That's what first attracted me to this whole idea of time exchange. The idea that I would have the opportunity to connect with someone who either is into the same thing that I'm into because I'm offering that, or can help me with a service, and then I can expand that group by not just trading with that one individual, but I can trade with anybody else that is part of the time exchange. So very, very interesting concept. So today we call this a Inside Fall River Special Edition, and we have two guests that are here, and it's an extended amount of time. So let's see if we can do a little game here. Why don't you guys give us some reasons as to why I brought the two of you together rather than seeing you each individually?
Well, one reason is because the Time Exchange grew out of a partnership that our office had with CEDC, the Community Economic Development Center in New Bedford, and United Neighbors in Fall River, as well as with the Ladue Center of Civic Engagement at the university. And we, as a collective, decided that a time exchange would be a great way for our area to, as Wendy says, build community, but also to start to give opportunities to people in our area who are unemployed and underemployed. It's a very practical way to get people involved in the economy that haven't had the opportunity to in other ways.
To me, the connection between sustainability and time exchange is a very strong one. In order for us to build and maintain a community, it's necessary. That essentially is the foundation of a sustainable society. To have a strong and vibrant community of people who are connected with each other, can help each other, know what each other needs are and resources are that they have to offer. This is the fundamental basis of a sustainable society. If we don't have that strong community, the institutions and agencies that try to help us, they wouldn't survive. You could have a strong community without a lot of institutions, but you couldn't have institutions without a strong community. And so it's essential, the time exchange helps to build and maintain that strong community, and therefore helps to bring about and maintain the sustainable society.
You mentioned Edgar Kahn, the guru of time exchanges. I guess he started the first time exchange, is that correct? Or one of the first time exchanges. And I did read a quote, I'll paraphrase it, that said, "We have everything we need if we use everything we have." And this seems to be the perfect example of being able to use the resources that each of us bring to the table. I think the other thing that I was most attracted to when we were first approached about being involved in the time exchange, United Neighbors, my organization, is one of the partnering agencies, for full disclosure, was that it preserves some dignity in the individual. If somebody is out of work and feeling really uncomfortable with that, they still can contribute in a meaningful way, perhaps even within their field, and receive something in return. And I think that that is something that helps build community too, because it levels the playing field. That if I come into the time exchange and I teach Susan to can, I get 1 hour for every hour. If I'm a plumber and I fix your pipes, I get 1 hour for every hour. If I'm a lawyer, I get 1 hour for every hour. So that leveling is really a great community building thing as well. So tell me a little bit, Susan, about resiliency. That's a word that we hear a lot, and community assets connected to the work that you're doing. So let's have some definitions first,
Okay.
and then let's see how they apply.
Okay, so the idea of resiliency in terms of a system or in terms of a community is the ability to take shocks and recover from them. So in this case, it would be the ability to take economic shocks or environmental shocks as a community and recover from them. And we've seen that we have had a number of shocks in the last several years, a lot of them, in my opinion, related to environmental environmental issues, including economic shocks, which in my opinion are related to peak oil and the rising price of oil and other commodities. So we've also had a number of shocks related to the effects of climate change, all the recent storms that we've had, and these things I think are likely to increase. So part of sustainability and part of the time exchange is the idea of building the web of community, relocalization of assets, relocalization of a lot of our economic interchanges, so that we have the ability to recover from shocks.
Great. And community assets.
Well, I think that we don't realize how important each of us as a community, the members of a community, are to each other. One of the things that the Time Exchange does is it records and it validates and it acknowledges a huge amount of work that goes on that nobody really thinks is important. Things like taking care of your kids, watching out for your elders, helping out your neighbors. This kind of work Edgar Cahn calls the core economy. And it's all of this work and all of this effort and energy that's put into maintaining our civilization, our society, but nobody ever gets paid for it. It's not a job where you get a paycheck. So we don't seem to think it's important, or we don't seem to pay much attention to it. In the Time Exchange, it's essentially, this is the most important work, and we're validating and acknowledging all this work that goes on, and says that, yes, an hour of one person, no matter who it is just as, can be just as valuable as the hour of another person. And if a lawyer really needs a housekeeper, he's willing to put in that time. It's really a matter of each one needing the help that the other one can offer. And it's a neighbor-to-neighbor service. This is the work that builds the community.
I think that years ago, when I was growing up, my grandparents lived on the first floor, my parents lived on the second floor, and my aunt and uncle lived on the third floor. So a lot of those services that the Time Bank is now providing were built into the family structure that we had. My grandmother was available for babysitting, her children and grandchildren were available for elder care, there were assorted aunts and uncles that could take you to different places. But as our society has grown, we've lost that, and we need to somehow replace that sense of family and community. And this seems like a wonderful way to go about doing it. So tell me how you sign up for the Time Bank.
Well, it's a pretty simple process. If you are able to work with a computer, you're golden. If you're not, you still can participate in the Time Exchange. It's just a little different, that's all. If you have a computer and you can get to the website of the Southeastern Massachusetts Time Exchange, there's a Join Now button. You go on there and you submit your basic information: name, address, phone number, email, contact information. We do ask for a birth date, but it's essentially for the purpose of demographics, get a sense of how our membership compares to other time exchanges, and also for funding sources. Once you've submitted that bit of information, the coordinators then see that application come in and send you an email and basically say, we'd like to get together with you. We'd like to meet you personally. Have you sign a release form, and we'll show you how to use the website. And that's really basically it. Once we've met with you, had a chance to get to know you a little bit, and had you sign that important release form, discuss the requirements. Then we show you the website, how to post the offers and how to post your hours and so forth. And then we activate your membership, and from then on you use a password of your choosing to go into the website and view all of the offers and requests that people have placed on the site. And then, as I said, then it's entirely between the two of you individuals to choose to make an exchange. The Time Exchange, the way the Southeastern Mass Time Exchange works is it's essentially a catalyst. It's a way for people to connect with each other, to find people that need help and people that have things to offer. It is, however, entirely up to the individual to decide who and when and how to connect with that person. So there are services which are can be on a very personal level, giving a ride to someone, coming into your house and helping to clean. These are services that you would not necessarily ask someone to do if you didn't know them, which is why the real goal of the time exchange is to help people get to know each other, to build friendships and trusting relationships so that then they gradually can begin to exchange more and more on a personal level. But you have opportunities to get to know them first. And so that's where we are. We try to provide opportunities for people to get to know each other and a way for them to learn who needs what and how they can help.
That sounds terrific. So how do people get together? I know I've heard you talk about potlucks before. Talk a little bit about that in relationship to the time exchange.
Well, when we started, we thought it would be a good idea to have perhaps at least a monthly potluck, one opportunity for people to get together from anywhere in the time exchange. We chose potlucks because food brings everyone together, and we felt that was an important piece of it too, because it's just about getting to know each other. We weren't too worried about fancy agendas or presentations or programs, although we do offer people the chance to come and share a little bit about, little show and tell, we call it a show and share, or share and tell, a little bit about their interests. But the goal is to get people together in an informal atmosphere. We're hoping to perhaps encourage some of our members to do other kinds of sharing, such as picnics or beach gatherings, as well as work groups too. I personally think that it's really important that in order to get to know someone, you need to work with them. Working with an individual gives you a much better sense of that person and how well you can understand them and trust them than anything else. And so social opportunities and work opportunities to get together and do something important and useful and helpful together builds those strong relationships.
Let's take a step back. If you don't have a computer, can you still be a member of the time exchange?
Thank you. I almost forgot about that. The coordinators, we have, right now, the Time Exchange has two coordinators, myself and Christophe Demers. We are funded as Vista volunteers and work full-time at maintaining the system. So we check the website and so forth. And we are also there if you have a question. You can pick up the telephone and call us. And if you would like us to help you find someone on the time exchange, that's what we're there for. So we can do it by phone. Another option is for a member who does have computer connection to be a buddy, a computer buddy for that person, so they can have them do it too. The person who's not on the computer would have their own account and so forth. The computer person would simply help them with the technical aspects of it. But again, if you don't even want to be anywhere near a computer, you can certainly function in this time exchange that way. Just give us a call. We print out a list of the offers and exchanges, like a directory, like a catalog, and we would send that to you. And if you needed anything, we could certainly come by.
And maybe you could sign up for computer lessons.
Exactly. We have at least a few people that are offering those.
So Susan, tell me a little bit more about your sustainability office. And an interesting term that I came across was zero waste society.
Oh yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because as you were talking about community assets and how people feel worthless, I think there's a real correlation between human resources and the way we think of natural resources. And in sustainability, if you look at the base of it, it's really recognizing that waste is a resource in the wrong place. So if we're throwing something out, it means that we haven't figured out how to use it. And some people even think pollution is just a resource in the wrong place. So the idea of a zero waste society is to design our structures and our manufacturing systems in such a way that they produce no waste. And manufacturing, that's called cradle to cradle. And I'll just give you a simple example in terms of food. If you have food waste and you put it in the landfill, it really is trash. It doesn't benefit anyone. But if you have food waste and you turn it into compost or use it to feed farm animals, then it becomes a resource. So I think it's the same thing as we look at our economy, if you're saying that a significant portion of people are useless in terms of our economy or our waste and are somehow not counted, then the economic system is incorrect. Somehow we need to develop a system where everyone is valued. So I feel like it's almost an exact parallel. When you're talking about a zero waste society, it's really looking at everything, every single person that we have as an asset to our planet, and everything that we have on the planet as an asset. And it's really our job to redesign our structures so that we are able to value all the resources that we have, both human and natural.
So now we see the connection between these two organizations. When Susan talks about zero waste society, valuing everybody's ability to make a contribution, and Bob talks about utilizing the time bank to be able to let people give what they can give and get what they need, you can see how the two offices are connected and correlated. That's very, very interesting. So tell me some of the things that are happening in southeastern Mass that fit into this pattern of resiliency, zero waste society, things like that.
Okay, so 4 years ago, our office, along with SERPID, the regional planning agency, developed the Southeastern Massachusetts Council on Sustainability. And through that, we've developed a sustainable economy project, and we think of the time bank as fitting in with that. Other things that are going on with that are the encouragement of local food production and for people to buy locally. Again, this idea of relocalization. On the energy front, we've been running symposia for municipalities and others on the siting of renewable energy systems, which can be a contentious issue for communities. And Bob and I and others in the office have also been talking about expanding the time exchange to things like community tool sheds and otherwise thinking about the sharing economy, which is a big term now. Actually, The Economist had a whole magazine devoted to the sharing economy a few months ago. It's things like couch surfing. So basically looking at ways that we can increase that in southeastern Massachusetts and expanding the frontiers of the time exchange.
Okay, let's go back to a couple of things. Okay, so first, couch surfing,
Yes.
for people who don't know what that is.
Yes.
If you're a mother of a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old, you might know what couch surfing is.
So the basic idea is that people who want to travel but don't necessarily have the means to pay for a hotel or a hostel can go online and trade rooms or trade couches with other people who also might want to travel and come to stay with them.
Right. We had an exchange in our home that we went on vacation to the West Coast, and people from the West Coast came and lived in our home, and we lived in their home. That was the simple way of doing it, but it makes so much sense.
It does.
Because not only do you get the experience of travel, but you get the experience of connecting with people that are from that environment. One of the things we always do when we go to a foreign country is that we want to meet the natives. Well, when we go to San Francisco, we want to meet the people that live in San Francisco, not just people that are visiting from Fall River. So that's really very interesting. And tell me, the other thing that caught my attention is when you were talking about food. Okay, so who sets up these systems? How do you get rid of your food with zero waste? Say you live in a tenement, you don't have a garden. Are there options for what you can do with your leftovers?
I think there are always options. Composting really takes a lot less space than people imagine, but that's another thing that we've been thinking of in addition to having neighborhood tool sheds, is to have neighborhood compost piles, which they have in many countries. The idea that everybody gathers their food waste or yard waste in one place, and then in the springtime, people have an opportunity to come and pick up the compost to dig into their gardens. Mm-hmm. So that is a possibility, and I know one of the things that Bob hasn't yet talked about is the fact that we're hoping to do some pilot programs with the time exchange that help to address some of the gaps in the food system in our area. For example, if farmers have leftover produce that they're not able to sell, to help get that produce into food pantries. Same with waste, or not waste, but leftover food from restaurants, to get those into food pantries. So we're hoping that those gaps can maybe be filled by time exchange members.
Right. So we have two of those initiatives happening right here in Fall River. Recently, the City of Fall River received a grant with the help of UMass Dartmouth. Do you want to talk a little bit about the tool shed? That was part of the Ladue Center through Deidre Healy's work, volunteerism.
I actually don't
Okay,
know. Sorry.
so okay, good. Okay, so we now, or very soon, we are going to have a tool shed where you're going to be able to borrow the city's tools
great.
for neighborhood cleanup, which is great. And that actually came through a partnership that we had with the Ladue Center on Volunteerism to create that. So that's really a wonderful thing. And then the other thing you talked about was repurposing food. And we do have a new program that was started by one of the AmeriCorps members here in town, who's employed by Greater Fall River Partners for Healthier Community, Brittany Bertone, called Plentiful Plates. And what she's doing is she is hooking up restaurants and soup kitchens so that the soup kitchen can receive the leftovers from the restaurant and utilize it the next day when they are feeding people. And right now, the inaugural member of Plentiful Plates is Cafe Arpeggio, and they are providing a tremendous amount of leftovers, and they're going to a number of soup kitchens right here in town.
That's fabulous.
So, I want to talk about the word repurposing. Recently, I was at my son's in San Francisco, and I met one of his friends, and I said, "So what do you do for a living?" And she says, "I repurpose." And that was an unfamiliar term. I knew what it meant, but I really didn't know what it meant, the whole meaning of it. So tell me why we're not saying recycling. Tell me why we're saying repurposing.
Well, I think that if we think about, again, going back to the original idea of sustainability, that we want to avoid using up resources that are not renewable. One way to do that is to take what we already have, fish or pallets, wooden pallets are something there's a huge amount of waste in wooden pallets. There's a huge amounts of fish waste that some people are now using for composting. So it's really looking at, tires are another example. And plastic bottles, many people now know that plastic bottles, which don't necessarily recycle into plastic that can be reused in a number of ways, actually can be put into plastic for park benches and other outdoor furniture. So it's a next step. It's not the mantra for sustainability is the reduce, which is try not to use something in the first place, because that's the base issue. Reusing or repurposing is now that you have already, you've already developed the plastic, you've already put something into it, manufactured something. Now, instead of putting that in the landfill, see if you can repurpose that in some sort of way. And it's actually, I think it will be an increasing part of our economy. I noticed, for example, when I traveled to Canada, that the amount of reuse shops is enormous compared to our economy, and I feel like that's something that's going to continue to grow.
And I think that that's something that's generational that's coming up too. So we're getting close to the end, so I want to get a couple of things in. Bob, talk a little bit about the upcoming conference in the fall. Time Exchange will be having with Stephanie Rearick and who she is.
Yeah, Stephanie Rearick is the director of the Dane County Time Exchange in Madison, Wisconsin, probably the largest time exchange in the United States. Although there are probably close to 400 or 500 time exchanges in this country.
Really?
There are also a number of them in Spain and Greece and the UK. It is around, and it's been around for a while, and a lot of people, almost everybody I talk to has never heard of it because it's quiet, because it's grassroots, because it doesn't involve much money. It's very, not very much attention is drawn to it. But we have to I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Stephanie, when is she coming? Okay, that's good.
Stephanie Rearick is coming in the end of September, October. She is on a trip. She's heading overseas, and we're going to gather time exchange people for a conference. While she's here, she's going to stop at a couple of different time exchanges in Rhode Island, Boston area, and then she's heading up to Maine. And while she does that, we're going to get a chance to talk to each other and connect and make even more things happen.
Great. So let's do some websites again. If you want to join the Time Exchange, you go on to
exchangetime.org.
Okay. And Susan, to connect with your office?
So it's umassd.edu/sustainability.
umassd.edu/sustainability. And you could sign up for conferences and
Yes,
lectures
absolutely.
and get all kinds of helpful, great hints about it. One last question. Time Exchange, cost any money to join?
Nope, nothing to join. It's free.
Great. So I'd like to thank my guests, Susan Jennings from the Office of Campus and Community Sustainability,
Wendy.
UMass Dartmouth, and Bob Bailey, the coordinator of the Southeastern Massachusetts Time Exchange. It's been great having you both here on this special edition of Inside Fall River.